Welcome back to Ace Attorney Anime Review. This is episode number 5. This is reviewing the 29th episode of the anime, which is The Stolen Turnabout, The Last Trial. Yeah, this kind of wraps up the second case of the season. Yeah, basically it's revealed that the ace detective, who was kind of involved with the stealing of the urn, turns out he was the actual murderer all along. Yep. How this is accomplished? Well, they figure out over the course of the episode, for that Ron actually, that was the guy who masked the mask, he basically wore the costume to the office where his former boss was murdered. Of course, he was knocked out. Yeah, and turns out that, well, let me explain this. Yeah, here's the thing. They had this ace attorney, which I found out who actually is a dub actor. It's Ian Sinclair. Yep, always great to hear this guy. And it's interesting though that he gives him a different, I knew his voice sounded very familiar. I couldn't exactly point it out because it's not the usual thing Ian Sinclair does. Because if you listen to how he voices both Brooke and Weiss, it's very similar. Or how he voices characters like Toriko from Toriko, or at least Kaneda from The Gray Man. Some of the characters is very similar, how he voices each other. This one is kind of like he's very arrogant and full of himself. Where he's not like the way he is in a couple other series I like him in. That I like characters he voiced in. Yep. Yeah, and as for the reasoning for why he killed the CEO, he was blackmailing him. Yep. And turns out he's actually the one who hired Ron to do his crimes as Mask the Mask. Yeah, he's the one who hired him. Which I'm like, okay. He did it for fortune. I get the fact the guy's got like a nice office. He must get paid a boatload of money, and to basically blackmail Ron to actually commit these crimes as Mask the Mask. Yep. And of course, during the course of the episode, for the first time in this particular season, Mia Fey finally shows up. Yes, her spirit anyways. I'm like, where the heck have you been for most of the season? I'm sure Colin Clickenbeer was probably like, hey, is my character going to show up yet that I voiced in this series? Yeah, waiting in the actual series itself, it's been a good 5 episodes since she actually last physically appeared in the show. And I'm kind of like, why did it take so long to bring her in? It honestly makes no sense at all to wait 5 episodes into the anime to actually, bring the character in. So here's the thing about Luke Atlee. He's the ace attorney. Ace detective. He was on trial for the theft in the courtroom right next door. So he was brought over, and of course he later confessed. Thanks to his testimony. Thanks to his own testimony, he just happened to blurt out. He was able to get convicted right away, and I still had to point out there was a recurring gag for, me anyways, because you have Godot getting these magical cups of coffees that come completely out of nowhere. And I don't know if in the games they ever explain where the heck these cups of coffee come from. Because these things just come out of nowhere. It's not like, he just puts his hand out, look, a cup of coffee. Yes, seriously, a cup of coffee it doesn't magically appear. It basically just pops up on there. He's always, and apparently by the end of the episode, he apparently has gone through at least 11 cups of coffee. And it's stated at the start of it that he can go through 17 cups of coffee in a day. Which I'm like, damn. And I'm like 2 things. One, why is he not going to the bathroom after drinking 17 cups of coffee? And 2, he must be really high on sugar. Yeah, he doesn't say exactly what's in the coffee, per se, but yeah, it's particularly quite funny. Oh, in case you wondered, is Gumshoe in this episode? Nope, I think he's just in the opening episode, and I think he's also in the last week's episode, and that's it. He doesn't do much of anything in this particular one. Overall, this was a particularly very good episode. Yes. I'm hoping after the season concludes that we get another season because even though this is made by a different studio, this is Cloverworks, I hope they get the green light to do season 3, which hopefully they'll adapt the fourth game of the series. This is actually the adaptation of the third game of the series. I would love to see adaptation of the fourth game. Yeah, I've never played the fourth game, but watching this show makes me want to play it. I'm sure it's be pretty simple to get my hands in the game, especially since I think it's for both PS3 and PS4. Yeah. hmm I don't know how many more episodes there are. Now, I know that next week's episode is not an adaptation of one of the cases from the video game. It's an anime original, which makes it the second time in this series we have an actual filler episode. The last time was actually halfway through the last season. This one comes exactly 6 episodes in, which is a little bizarre. Is it saying that because this shows up now in episode 6, does it mean that the season's going to be 12 episodes long? I have no idea. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah. Well, there's one thing I looked up online basically about Godot, but I'm not going to spoil it here, about who he really is and his connection to Phoenix. And of course, he doesn't pronounce Phoenix's name. He refers to him as Trite. Yeah, refers to him as Trite, even though his name is actually Right. Oh yeah, and this is funny bit at the end of the episode after Ron gets pronounced not guilty. Of course, Luke Atlee gets, well, sort of convicted anyways of the crime. And yeah, then pretty much she's like holding his hand as sort of a thank you um for helping out Ron. And of course, she points out though that she doesn't like people like Luke at she doesn't like people like the Ace Detective. She loves her husband. And she's like holding his hand, and all of a sudden Pearl shows up. Yeah, she's absent for most of this episode, and apparently it's a complete misunderstanding of exactly what I mean. Yeah, he's of course right is Phoenix is actually blushing. He's trying to be polite because this is a beautiful woman who happens to be his client's wife, and she's holding his hand. And apparently Pearl gets. This is a complete misunderstanding. So she slaps him and basically beats the crap out of him for just holding her hand. I'm like, wow. And she says, "You do this in front of Mr. Maya." Though everything is fine by the next episode, by the next these two show up, because as far as I can tell from the preview I saw for next week's episode, yeah, the Fae girls are not in the episode at all because this is set in the past. Next week's episode. This hopefully is going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, but it looks like they might show up basically as part of a bookend of this episode, but who knows? I also hope at some point they might adapt some of the cases from the manga. Excuse me. Yeah, because the manga itself has some pretty interesting cases. I personally wouldn't mind it. I mean, there's a good 4 or 5 cases from the Ace Attorney manga, and I read the first 3 volumes. This is a damn good manga series, and I would love it if they would adapt this particular manga into the actual anime itself. For one thing, in the case of this particular season, it might make it a little bit longer. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing this for like a season 3 or 4 if they adapt, because there's like about for the based on the show itself, there's a good, I think, about 5 cases. I think there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's a good like 7 cases. So this is good enough for about a good, almost like a good full season to basically do these particular cases. So wouldn't be a bad idea to do. Just have it where you can have because I kind of know what happens at the end of the third game. but they could probably have these particular cases adapted for the actual anime itself before they get to the game. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did. Yeah. Alright, so that's really it for this particular review. So tomorrow, 2 videos. Yep. I was thinking of doing another video tonight, but I think this will be it for tonight, okay? But until I see you over the next review, bye.